swear I'll kill you if you hurt Alice! Do you hear me? Come back here!
He had Alice.
Shaping this area of dark foggy forest into a playable area has been challenging. We wanted to give the player the impression of being lost without making the navigation ever annoying. Also, we noticed that the journey has been quite long through the national park and many players wanted to pick up the pace this far. This basically meant that we did have to close off some of the branches we originally thought would be great to explore here.
on my way. Don't open the door.
What am I, crazy?
Stay hidden. I'll be there soon. Just make sure you keep the lights on. I still had to reach Barry at the cabin, but at least I was out of the woods.
Here we have the first driving scene. The vehicles were originally designed to be used as weapons against the dark forces. The headlights are used to burn the darkness away, and you finish them off by driving over them. Along the way, vehicles became a more important part of level design, and scenes which use vehicles are clearly differentiated from basic foot combat sections.
The flare gun was probably the best weapon I could imagine against the dark things I was facing. It was the kidnapper.
You son of a bitch! Where's my wife?
Enough horseplay, Wake. You deliver the manuscript, and you can have your woman back. Simple as that.
I don't... Listen. I'm gonna need time to finish it. I still need to write the ending. I need a week.
Not done?
I need a week.
2 days. The old Bright Falls coal mine is nearby. You can find it easy, city boy. The main building, there at noon. You bring the manuscript, you'll get your wife. If not, well, get me?
Yes, I get you.
Barry had talked about birds over the phone.
I am so glad you're here. A couple of them got in here before I blocked the chimney. This isn't normal. These birds are weird. sorry, Al. I'm sorry for thinking you were having a psychotic episode, man.
Previously...
Help you folks? Name's Randolph. I'm the manager.
We're looking for Rose. Works as a waitress down at the diner.
Rose, sure. Nice girl. Who wants to know?
I'm Alan Wake.
The writer, huh? I heard on the radio you were visiting. Well, I'll show you her trailer. That Rose, she's a nice girl. Always pays her rent on time.
As I was saying, Al.
The trailer park where Rose lives is a cozy place that recently had a bit of a shock when a sailing boat picked up by a tornado crashed in the middle of two trailers. This is a location that for a long time looked like it was not going to make it in the final game, but I'm glad it did, because I think it's one of those places that helps define the character and style of the game in a visual way. When we went out photo shooting along the Pacific Northwest area, we came across many trailer parks, and we have plenty of material for them. So I think that really shows in the authenticity of this location.
Zane was heavily into diving, so much so that the place came to be called Diver's Isle. But the volcano under the lake erupted in 1970, and Zane went down with the island. It gets better. A local girl, Barbara Jagger, drowned in Cauldron Lake just a week earlier. They were lovers.
Sure, Jagger's a local spook store. The Scratching Hag. Comes for you in the dark. Childish stuff like that.
Anyway, Al, I'm just getting to the best part. All of the articles about this stuff were written by Cynthia Weaver. I asked her out.
Welcome
Crazy bad lady you met.
What?
Oh dear, Mr. Wake. I'm so glad you're here.
Rose, you have my manuscript?
Oh. Oh yes.
She had some kind of a breakdown.
Yes. Please come in.
I felt nauseous, hungover. Only anger kept me going. Rose took a day from me. I had less than 12 hours left to meet the kidnapper. All I could do was get Barry into the car, work something out once I got on the road. My gun and flashlight.
The Dark Presence is the main adversary in our game, and I wouldn't necessarily call it evil, but it is completely alien to our world, and that may pretty much be the same thing. We don't really want to explain the Dark Presence in too much detail. We kind of want it to remain a mystery, but let me say this much. It's definitely not human. It doesn't think the way we do. A good example of this would be when Wake actually escapes from the cabin, and he actually just sits there and writes the whole thing into the story, and the Dark Presence is right there, and it just doesn't understand what's going on. It doesn't work on that level of logic. On the other hand, it can be very devious. For example, it has no problems whatsoever using Alice and Rose against Wake in a very, very sort of, contrived manner, and it works very well too. We talked quite a bit about the Dark Presence being weak in the beginning of the game, and that's true as far as it goes, but it only refers to the foothold it has in our world. Now, it is strong. It is very, very strong and very, very big in its own world.
You're gonna get it now.
I hated to leave Barry behind, but there was no way I'd miss my appointment with the kidnapper.
Give it up, Mr. Wake. Come on. Make it easy on him. go! Okay, man, keep your eyes peeled. He's gonna try to make it through here.
Oh, damn.
Fan out! No! Stop! I don't know where! God damn it, where'd he go? Look away! He's gone! Come on, guys! We need to head him off! Search the area! Stay sharp! This way! Over here! I've lost contact with most of the men you assigned to me. It's way too...
This horror was everywhere I went, circling me. The cops didn't stand a chance. They were after a writer, not a monster.
You on the ground. Hold it right there. There's nowhere to run. Freeze!
I imagined that the broadcast tower in the distance was part of the local radio station. Maine seemed like a decent guy. Perhaps he could give me directions to the coal mine. Unnatural shadows clung to the gate. The darkness that was after me was trying to stop me. I wouldn't get through without a light. It took me a moment to recognize the harsh. They were an
Here we see one of the most useful tools that the gameplay designers have. We call it beds, for bringing enemies to the scene. It started off as a simple spawning system, but as time went on, it evolved into something bigger. It actually now incorporates build-up as well. You hear the whispers and sounds that the darkness creates, and, well, the darkness itself actually appearing in the forest. It hides the enemies when they actually get close to you. On top of that, we have a reveal system which shows the first enemy attacking you, but we do it only once per combat. After that, you're on your own.
We don't see a lot of Pat Main in the game, but actually he has a considerable presence. One of the problems with Alan Wake was that we really wanted to maintain that small town atmosphere, but that's very hard to do when, you don't actually spend a lot of time in the small town itself. A familiar and dependable radio solved that problem. Also, I think RJ Allison, who plays Pat Main, did a wonderful job. He really nails the character, and it's so great to be alone in the dark and then hear that warm and dependable voice.
Well, thank you very much for that passionate viewpoint, Lorna. Oh, here's a little surprise. The famous writer Alan Wake just walked in. Folks, I'm going to see if I can talk him into an interview.
Come on in, Mr.
Oh, I'm so glad you could find it.
I'll get you yet, even if it kills me, you hear me?
Here we have another really well set up journey. The train depot and the bridge in the distance well visible from early on. As an interesting side note, this whole area was originally just a minor branch, not even a branch. Alan Wake just basically had to get a car from the forest and continue towards the mining museum. With months of iteration and looking at the possibilities given by the environment, we found out that this area could have lots of poltergeist events, could have hidden routes and so forth, the bridge and the train depot all appearing far later in their development.
There was no sensible reason for the power company or lines to be here. It was almost as if they were looking for someone in the rooms.
Hello?
The most stubborn man I've ever met.
Alice? Alice?
Alan. I'm so afraid. It keeps me in the dark. Please help me. I look at you, Alan, and it's not you. Something else. Looking out from behind your eyes.
Alice, I'm here.
I'm so alone here. It's all gonna go to hell. You need to be careful. Cooperate.
The connection had been terrible, but that wasn't the only thing that hadn't been right with the call. She sounded wrong somehow, but she had called me. I could see a railway bridge up ahead.
Everybody knows the movie Poltergeist, but I wouldn't say that it was the origin for this idea. This game is about possession. It's about the dark presence taking over everything in the world. It started off with humans, and, well, in the design, the inanimate objects were the next logical step. One of the hardest things to do was to convey intent. The objects don't have any body language, unlike the Taken. How we ended up with the current feature was that the lead writer actually encountered a problematic physical object. It flickered around the terrain erratically, and you really couldn't tell what is going to happen next. And that ended up being a real feature. And here you can see the result.
That was pursuing me was growing stronger, and it was taking over everything in its path. Teenager, just started to get interested in writing. Stephen King had been a source of inspiration to me. I thought about all the inanimate objects that had come to life in his books. No one is safe in a good horror story. Certainly not the protagonist. That's what makes them fun. This was anything but. The darkness could possess anything, and it was getting closer.
The dark presence can take over almost anything. That includes machinery like vehicles. In the next scene you will see the bulldozer attacking you, and it might be familiar to you from demos that have been shown in different shows before. I would like to say that plenty of thought and research went into this, but the fact is that it was basically just a lucky test when we fooled around with the AI and physics. And here you can see the results.
Today, I would meet the kidnapper, and he would give me Alice.
This daytime driving sequence is great to have in the final game, especially considering that it was a source of debate earlier on. It's fairly hard to actually see these kind of sequences, are they actually working or not, before we have the final environment, the mood, the sounds and so forth. Of course now it is great to have in the final game. It provides a very nice change of pace in the middle of episode 3, and it provides great showcase for our technology, our views, and also it's great to see the environment that you usually see in the night, covered in shadows and in fog, in its full glory.
The feel of history and roots is somehow very present in the whole Pacific Northwest area. It's one of those things that lends the unique feel to this region. This was once a very inaccessible and thus isolated region, but in the turn of the 19th and 20th century, as railroads started getting built, it was suddenly connected to the rest of the country. This greatly benefited industries like mining, for example, because now ore could easily be transported across vast distances. Towards 1960s and 1970s, mining steadily declined, but this area is still filled with all sorts of landmarks and reminders of that once blooming industry. To me, these kinds of things really matter because they are the reason behind why things are and look the way they are. So, long story short, decaying structures like old train carts and mining structures and tipple buildings are really a part of the history of this area. And that's all the reason we needed to include one of those beautiful tipple buildings as a location in the game. As many of its real-world counterparts, it serves now as a museum.
I was early. I was supposed to meet the kidnapper at noon in the main building. The coal mine was quiet. It was a museum now.
Wait!
Where the hell are you?
Change of plans! You know where Mirror Peak is? the big mountain north of where you are. You follow the path from the mine, you can't miss it. There's a lookout point there. I'll be waiting.
I'm through being jerked around by you.
You want to see your wife alive? Because if you do, you better watch what you say to me. Do we understand each other?
I want to talk to Alice.
Yeah, I want the manuscript. Don't keep me waiting, Wake.
Hello? Hello! Ah! I'm gonna kill him!
I had to get to Mirror Peak. It was close. Maybe closer than ever before.
Okay, now this whole kidnapping thing is a red herring, of course. It's just an attempt to manipulate Wake and to get him to deliver the manuscript. The so-called kidnapper, Mott, well, he doesn't have Alice, he doesn't know where Alice is, and neither does Dr. Hartman, the guy who's hired Mott. But they do know that Wake will do anything to get Alice back, so, you know, they use her. They're nice people like that. The problem is that Wake doesn't have the manuscript at all. He doesn't know where it is, he has a couple of pages, but of course that's not enough. So, they're lying to Wake about having Alice, and Wake is lying to them about having the manuscript, and nobody has much of anything. It doesn't end very well for Mott, you know, who is going to get his in a couple of minutes, or, you know, a little longer. And Dr. Hartman doesn't have such a great day either. No, what can I say? Karma's a bitch.
I had to find a way to avoid electrocution. There was no way the flashbang grenades were Standard Power Company equipment.
Our technology enables us to have a set of ready-made landscape types that tile seamlessly with each other and can be used to quickly lay out large sections of terrain, instantly creating realistic landscapes. These biotypes, as we call them, contain lots of different information about the resulting shape of the terrain. Things like what the ground is comprised of, is it mud, rocks or grass, and what grows on it, different kind of foliage and trees, and also its bumpiness. So we don't manually build every square meter of forest that there is in the game, but instead focus our efforts on creating these biotypes so realistic that they can be used to cover a patch of terrain of almost any size and still look realistic. We then cover the terrain with patches of different biotypes that go together very well before finally going over the area with a precision polish.
The dark presence was moving ahead of me in the same direction I was going. A cold feeling settled itself in the pit of my stomach. Was it going for Alice?
The graveyard shift may cause cancer.
The place was dead, a ghost town. Had been for decades, maybe a century. outside of writing is a struggle. I feel ill. I managed to make my way downstairs. There's a shoebox filled with books and papers by Thomas Zane. The kidnapper had sent me a text. The message was full of spelling errors and insults. It was telling me to hurry up.
Birds.
We chose birds as our only animal enemy type. The main reason being that the birds actually bring something new to the table, an extra dimension. We try to think through the whole package of the player experience. Player needs to look down for bear traps, look ahead for taken, and look up for the birds.
The guys who did this mind puzzle, Antti and Tiago, did a really amazing job here. This is again one of the cases where we started with a very low-key design requirement, just something to occupy the player for a moment. But with iteration, looking at what works, what not, we actually got this amazing sequence which does what it's supposed to do. It looks complex, it looks imposing, but it's very intuitive to play, and I hope you actually enjoy going through it.
In a similar vein to how we handle the different types of terrain with biotypes, we have a preset system for weather styles as well. The game engine lets us control numerous parameters, things like cloudiness, wind, rain, and also lighting parameters, things like color, intensity, and blooming, to create truly stunning weather effects. Using this technology, we have created a palette of ready-made weathers that can be called upon at any time, so really it is weather on demand at the push of a button. Each level has its own, or sometimes many, different styles of ambience, and so their own mood.
Oh, great. Another cable car. Just great. could see Cauldron Lake. I thought I could make out the spot where the island and the cabin had been. There was a light near it. It had to be a boat. I was close now. I had to get there fast. I dreaded what I would find.
Hey! Are you? Wait! Hey, I'm here! I'm coming!
No! Get away! Sorry. Please! The boss didn't know who he was messing with. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. We don't have a wife. We don't know where she is. She's probably drowned. Who just said we had her?
Previously on... I felt groggy. Whatever Hartman had pumped in me was making me numb.
As far as the bad guys go, Dr. Hartman isn't the main villain here, but he's probably a little more interesting than the Dark Presence. He's a very smart guy, and he knows a lot about the Dark Presence and Cauldron Lake in general. He kind of presents himself as a pop psychologist to the stars, but that's kind of a ruse. He just wants creative people in so he can exploit them. With Wake, of course, he resorted to a little more drastic measures. You know, he pretended to have kidnapped his wife, fished him out of a lake, you know, tried to convince him that he was schizophrenic, and it doesn't end very well for him, but, you know, it's a valiant effort anyway. We have a lot of backstory for this guy, and I'd love to do a little bit more with him in the future, but, you know, of course, we don't exactly leave him feeling very well at the end of this one.
I would be more concerned if you weren't suspicious of me. I don't blame you for it.
Big of you.
Now, why don't you come with me? We'll reacquaint you with my clinic and go over everything you might have forgotten. Little walk and some fresh air? Yes, it will do you good. This corridor is for patients. Most of them aren't here right now. Jack took them out for a fishing trip, except for the ones who are particularly vulnerable, of course. I encourage creativity as a part of the recovery process here at Cauldron Lake Lodge. I specialize in treating artists.
I bet you do.
Splendid, Alan. I honestly believe we can get this thing under control if we work together. This way, Alan. Now, Alan, from past experience with you, I know I need to get right into the heart of the matter as quickly as I can after an episode. So I'm just going to say this. Alice is dead.
No.
You're in a very vulnerable state until you understand and accept this. Alice drowned, and you couldn't face it. You're suffering from hallucinations, paranoid delusions, unusual thinking, an obsession about light and darkness, a feeling that everything revolves around you, your thoughts and dreams. Your mind has constructed an elaborate fantasy scenario in which your writings are affecting reality. She has been kidnapped and supernatural forces of darkness are trying to stop you. We go this way, Alan.
Cauldron Lake Lodge is the residence and place of practice for Dr. Emil Hartman, who uses it as a sort of a nursing home and also a place of inspiration for artists he treats there. Built in the turn of the century, it is an imposing building, hewn from large timber and heavy stone, with a steep shingle roof to weather off even the heaviest of snowfalls. The starting idea for this location was the real-world hotel of Timberline Lodge that they used in the movie Shining, but following the typical style of these buildings and the heavy materials used in the construction, it quickly evolved into a thing of its own.
By nature, Alan, we both know this. Everything can be explained logically.
Story-wise, the most important location in the game, Cauldron Lake, is inspired by the real-world location of Crater Lake in Oregon. It's a vast lake formed from a volcano thousands of years ago in a massive eruption. It's truly a breathtaking place that anyone interested in such things should definitely visit. In the game, the location, Cauldron Lake, has actually had two notable eruptions. One that originally formed the lake, and then another which took down a small island in it, along with its cabin and even a person, a diver called Thomas Zane. The place is said to hold an ancient power, and it's not without reason, as you will find out playing the game.
Follow me. Alan, what I'm telling you is good news. Right now we're in control. Every time you have a relapse, it gets more and more difficult to resurface from the dark depths of your imagination. Not surprising, considering your profession. Imagination is what you work with. After all your nightmares, this should come as an immense relief to you. If it doesn't, why is that? Because I'm lying? Or because you don't want to admit that you're not well? It's very natural for you to think of me as your enemy. It's part of the illness.
I let him talk. Hartman obviously loved his own voice. His words echoed madly inside my head. I dug my nails into the palms of my hands to stay focused.
You need to work with me. Once you accept that, we can begin the journey towards your recovery. Come along. Let's go inside. Here's the entrance to the office wing. That's for staff only.
Scary, scary, scary.
Emerson.
I'm a real bad dream, mister. You should be afraid of me. Don't want to run into me in the night, that's for sure.
Please, Emerson. Mr. Wake is confused enough as it is.
Yeah, you'd like me to go away so you won't be scared. But you can't just decide what kind of dream you have or when you have it.
Emerson.
Okay. Sorry. Boo.
La 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 la.
Elbow strike.
Oh yeah. La 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 la.
Come on, this way. Now, you might have noticed the typewriter in your room. You've been writing as a part of the therapy. As soon as you feel up to it, you should continue.
My rheumatism's killing me. There's a storm coming. Oh, what a storm.
I hope it wipes this place off the face of the earth.
And these two are the Anderson brothers, Odin and Thor. They had how should I put this? A heavy metal band in the 70s and 80s called Old Gods of Asgard. They even adopted new first names to complete the image of Viking gods. After the band broke up, they lived on a farm nearby. They are, well, in advanced stages of dementia. They're well cared for, TLC and all that. There's nothing more that can be done. I'm afraid that the rock and roll lifestyle has left its mark.
No, that won't do.
My head was clearing up, or according to Hartman, I was sinking back into the fantasy. I was convinced he was lying to me about everything. Crazy or not, the Andersons made more sense.
I may need a hand here later on, Bert. The storm's bound to make pretty jumpy.
Something's wrong.
Gotcha. Doc's got me looking after Wake.
I didn't know what the chaos was all about, but it could be my only chance of getting out of here.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Here's a friendly poke from the old way.
Sinclair looked bad. That wasn't a love tap. The crazy little fart hit her hard. If she was one of Hartman's villains, she had it coming. I had to get to Hartman's office. He'd taken all my manuscript pages. That's where he'd been keeping them.
It's my storm. I'm taking it.
Get out of here! Hartman, do you hear me? I'm gonna chew your crazy quack ass to shreds!
Barry?
Ow! About time!
Barry!
The Haunted House sequence went through a lot of iterations during development. We had as extreme routes as Alan Wake actually going behind and below the lodge on the mountain cliffs and fighting against possessed patients. Eventually it was great that we focused on the Poltergeist events because it allowed us to create a nice chain of smaller light-based puzzles, and it also wrapped up really nicely with the big Poltergeist fight in the main yard.
As the Dark Presence attacks the lodge, we are seeing an escalation in its power and aggressiveness. Maybe even some frustration. It's now been chasing you for quite a while and with little success. And now that you are on its home court, so to speak, it's literally throwing stuff at you left and right. It's a good thing that the lodge is built to handle heavy storms, or otherwise it might come crashing down on you with all the furniture that's flying around. This scene is kinda like an action puzzle where you have to react to fast-changing conditions and find your way out of the building before it's too late. Fans of Max Payne 1 might have a fleeting sense of familiarity here.
Gate's locked. You're gonna have to go through the hedge maze over there.
Barry, I don't have a light.
Take this, Al. Oh God! Look at the house, Al.
Originally, the hedge maze actually was a circular shape. It looked great from the aerial shots, and everything was pretty good as long as you actually didn't go in there. But playing a maze with all the corridors in the various curves just didn't really work, and we then went with this more traditional setup.
channel. We'll turn it off. We don't want any fighting. It makes me... You get 2 barrels
Let's get out of here. Can you open this gate?
Maybe.
Barry.
Well, I slammed it shut when Nasty showed up, and the key fits kind of loose in the lock, so, Barry! I'll find it! Don't worry about it!
Hurry up, Barry!
I had lost my gun in the crash. Barry was nowhere to be seen.
Barry! Barry!
Here we have, once again, a twist to gameplay. We actually take away the light, the main tool of the player. The point of this scene is to demonstrate how utterly helpless Wake is without his light against the forces of darkness. There really isn't any other option here but to run or die.
There's no way you can climb down though. It's like a sheer wall. Ah! Al! There's something moving down here!
Barry, it's a taken! Use a flare, Barry!
Ah! Yeah!
Barry, are you alright?
I'm good, Al! I'm great! Guess you never mess with anyone from New York City before.
This area is the Anderson farm. In the game we have these two goofy guys called the Anderson brothers. They used to live here, but with time they have gone a bit funny in the head, and now they spend most of their time at Hartman's clinic, although they do wander off all the time.
Yeah, they were in a band called the Old Gods of Asgard, and they actually pretended to be Nordic gods. And that whole rock and roll lifestyle thing was just a little bit too much for them. And it probably didn't help that they actually made their moonshine with water from Cauldron Lake. These guys are nuts.
Yeah, but this is a really cool location. It used to be an ordinary farm, but as these guys led their rock and roll lifestyle, they made it into their own image, and they built this stage in the middle of the cornfield and even decorated the farmhouse with Viking imagery. They had some serious parties here. This whole Viking thing was like a lifestyle for them, and in the end they started to believe in their own characters. Unfortunately, it went a bit too far and they woke up the Dark Presence with their music.
Yeah, this all took place not long after Zane had managed to put the Dark Prince down in the first place, and the Dark Prince really messed with their heads. That's another reason why they're so crazy. And eventually they managed to put it back down, but unfortunately they didn't really do a very good job of it. And I guess that's good, because if they had, then we wouldn't be having a story here at all.
That's true. These guys really aren't that good with details. They sort of let the Dark Presence hanging in limbo, kind of like waiting for somebody to come along and put it back into business.
Cue Alan Wake.
Oh yeah.
You're gonna have to find your way around to the farm now. I'll be waiting.
Barry, just wait for me, okay?
Al, I'm not staying here. It's suicide. I'm going to the farm. I'm gonna go ahead and secure the area. You can catch up. Don't worry about it. I'm on the case.
Now he's Rambo. This would turn into a disaster if I didn't catch up with Barry. Crawled over the gate. I needed a light to destroy them to get through. I could sense the movement.
And here the player gets the light back to basics. A good boost, as you know, blinds the enemies and slows them down, and that's the only way to survive through this situation. You still need a weapon to be able to defeat them, so the only option is to continue running.
car was driving away from the farm, headed in the same general direction as I was. For all I knew, it was Barry, caught in the consequences of leaping before looking. The car was heading for the cabin up ahead. It wasn't far. If it was Barry, I would see the damage soon.
I'm trying to deliver each page to the right time and place. I'm trying to show you how the story goes.
I had seen glimpses of the light before. I had seen it in my dream. It was a strange spaceman or a diver in a bulky suit. He was the one who'd been placing the pages on my path. Someone had left a gun behind. Now I had a fighting chance of reaching the farm.
The journey from the crashed car, the second one we have in the game, up to this hunting cabin has been fun to develop. It was really cool to see different things, try different things that work out with Wake being very vulnerable. Originally, we tried giving Wake just less ammunition, less batteries. Then we took the revolver away for quite a long time. And in this final version, you actually start the whole journey without any kind of light source either.
I know you. You were in jail the other day. I've run through every possible course in my head. If I can... The story I'm writing won't save Alice. It's a horror story. And it's going to... Let me guess. Danny, huh? Alice to get to me, dangled her in front of me to keep me going. The farm was still a good distance away. I'd need a car to get there fast. If Barry wasn't up here, he was probably in trouble.
The farmlands area has been one of the most liked areas during early gameplay testing. I think the big element of this is that we have very many different gameplay types during this journey. We just had a very tightly planned, very tightly designed survival journey up to this hunting cabin, and then again now we give the player a car, we give a direction, and we give the player the chance to actually dictate his own pace for a while.
I'd known the brothers used to be some kind of rock stars, but it hadn't really sunk in until I saw the stage.
I'm so glad you decided to go it alone, Mr. Johnson.
Shut up and shoot! Ow! We have to fight them off! I can set off one of the fireworks from here and help you out! Hey, Al! You know this is a lot of people still around! This is stuff! Al, hold on! I'm trying to get the stage right off!
Children of the Elder God, what a great song to kick ass to. I think the whole stage fight sequence is going to be one of the most memorable moments for a lot of people, simply because it's just such a ridiculous action-packed sequence. The music is actually by the band Poets of the Fall, who have a long history of collaboration with Remedy. We kind of wanted this to sound like 70s heavy rock, and I think they did a fantastic job of that, and from what I hear, they had a good time doing that too. They also did the other song that you hear a little bit later at the farmhouse, The Poet and the Muse, and that's of course more of a ballad, but you know, still a very nice song. The lyrics of both songs are actually based on poems by our lead writer Sam Lake.
See, bestseller, no reason to worry. Your cutout's good as new, right where I left it. I'll come back for it once we have the place secured. Wake here has something to say. What's that, Al?
I'm Alan Wake.
Wow. Look at that thing, Al. They really went all out with this Viking crap, didn't they? Look at all this stuff. They must have done okay for themselves. So how come I never heard of these guys before?
Soft embrace, somewhere between fantasy and
The Viking boat looked imposing, almost like a battering ram.
Had quite a production going on. Ooh, you know what, Al? If we make it through this alive, I'm gonna start representing you.
I'm good. Keep your eyes open, okay?
I could see the building that had to be the Andersons' home on the other side of the field. It wasn't far now. I wasn't worried about trusting the ramblings of two burned-out geriatric wrecks. They had the goods.
Al? Is that you out there, buddy?
Yeah, it's me.
Hey, let's go, man. I think we're gonna have to work together to open this gate, Al. Looks pretty heavy. Hey, I think that's the farm on the other side of the field. We're almost there. This farm is a crazy place for crazy people.
We should feel right at home then.
Come on, one more gate. Let's do this thing. lights are out. Guess we better check the fuse box. You know, this place looks kind of lived in. I thought the Andersons were in the booby hatch.
Yeah, I don't think they keep too close an eye on them at the clinic. They seem to slip away.
Can you hear that, Al? Music?
Of course. We need to find where it's coming from. That's the message the Andersons talked about. That's the whole reason we're here.
Lady of the Light? Oh, that's gotta be what's-her-face, the crazy lamp lady from the town.
Cynthia Weaver.
Right. Must be.
From the story point of view, this is a tremendously important sequence in the game. This is kind of where we reveal everything that happened during that missing week, and it's a kind of a, you know, a dream sequence or a time traveling trip, you know, something that's brought on by the Andersons' mystical moonshine. And it doesn't really matter whether Wake is actually literally there or if he's just observing things through some sort of a, you know, memory form or whatever. He's there and he's seeing what's happening. For us, this was a kind of a show don't tell kind of a thing, because we could have turned this into a very long cinematic, but we kind of wanted the player to be able to observe things.
I remembered being surprised to see the cabin dark. Alice would have never turned the lights off.
Alice? Alice!
I remembered thinking I caught a glimpse of her form underwater, sinking into the darkness. Diving after her was the last vague memory I had of that night. After that, the next thing I could remember was waking up behind the wheel of the crash car and finding the first pages of the manuscript. I couldn't find her in all that blackness. I must have thought she drowned.
Alice!
Jagger had Alice, and so she had me.
Alice!
I'd been easy prey.
Look at the cabin. Is there someone in the window?
Alice?
Maybe she didn't drown after all. Maybe she's inside.
Alice!
Yes.
The dark presence had touched me. She had dug her nails into my brain and used me, made me her puppet.
She must be here somewhere. Maybe upstairs in the study.
Alice!
Yes, that's where she is. You can apologize.
Alice!
You laugh at the whole thing together and put it
Alice?
behind you. She's not here. You were foolish to think so. No, she's dead. She drowned.
No, no, no!
It's your fault your wife is dead. You are guilty. All she wanted was to help you right. You killed her.
Ah!
Oh, hush. There's still hope. Cauldron Lake is a special place. Here, you have the power to change things. She wanted you to write. I will tell you what to do. You can write her back. The story will come true, and all will be well again.
She had Alice, and the manuscript was the ransom for her. Previously on Alan... All the manuscript pages were gone. The FBI agent had taken them.
I think my tongue just took a crap in my mouth. Ugh. Oh, wait, we're in jail now? Al. Al, this is not good.
That about sums it up.
Oh, I am never drinking again.
I need to talk to Weaver. She's the one in the song. The Lady of the Light.
What, the crazy lady? Ugh, whatever you say, Al, but we're stuck here. They're not
even
gonna...
interviewed Wake.
I had some reading to do first, Sheriff, and let me tell you, it was an interesting read. Well, I've got you now, Raymond Chandler. It's all here. All the evidence, including conspiracy to murder a federal agent. There's no way you're walking out of here. You hear me in there, Bret Easton Ellis? Huh?
Agent Nightingale, I want to talk to your superior.
Well, we all want things, Sheriff. I wanted my... Look, that's not possible right now.
Agent Nightingale, I insist. Wake, what's wrong? Oh my god!
Light. We need light. It's the only way to fight this thing.
In my office. I've got your things there. Follow me.
Oh man! We're sitting ducks with the lights out.
Stay cool. I can get the emergency.
We like to keep things a little vague because once you start explaining things in great detail, you kind of lose a lot of the magic. That said, I think it's very clear to everybody by now that Bright Falls is a very weird place, and it's not just about Cauldron Lake and what dwells within. Sarah Breaker is the sheriff here, and given the nature of Bright Falls, she has a fairly difficult job. Once you're the sheriff here, you're not just writing parking tickets, you're actually responsible for the entire community. And that's why her view of this whole thing is a little different than Wake's, because you could say that Wake's goal is a little bit selfish because it's all about his wife and his marriage, and Sarah is a little bit more community-minded because she's really fighting to save Bright Falls from this threat.
Here are your things. Wake, what do I need to know? What do you need from me?
They can be hurt in the light, only in the light. And I need to find Cynthia Weaver. She can help me stop this.
Light. Check. Cynthia. She lives in the old decommissioned power plant. I can get you there pretty quickly in the rescue chopper. Wheeler, I need you to stay here.
What? No!
We're going to fetch our ride, but I have friends who need to be warned about this, and I can't be in two places at once. I need your help.
Well, okay.
Here's a list of people and phone numbers. I need you to call them and tell them you have a message from me. Night Springs, okay? They'll know what to do.
Night Springs? Like the TV show? Gotcha. Oh, hey, that radio guy's on the list. Maine. Who's Frank Breaker? He related to you?
My dad.
Hey, is this like a secret society?
Can you do this? You'll be safe here. The backup power's on. These guys need to be alerted, just in case we don't come back.
You'll come back for me though, right?
As soon as we get the chopper ready. Thanks, Wheeler. I owe you one. Okay, let's go, Wake. Through the back.
Hello, Mr. Breaker. This is
Oh, hell. Whatever took Nightingale must have broken the gate controls. We can't reach the gate's control box from here. We need to get to the other side.
I'll go. I'll open the gate for you once I'm across. You stay here in the light and cover me, Sheriff, okay?
The town of Bright Falls is a sleepy, idyllic small town, the type that's familiar from much of popular culture, where little happens and time almost seems to stand still. The heaviest influences for this location were the town of Snoqualmie, where they shot Twin Peaks, and also the town of Roslyn, the location for Northern Exposure. If you've seen these shows or visited similar locations, you might recognize the dreamlike, almost peaceful ambience that they often seem to have. It's as if time is reluctant to move on, sort of clinging back to the glory days when the town was born, where industries like mining and logging were booming. It is genuine Americana, and I think we have captured it quite well.
Hey, Sheriff! Your password. Night Springs? What's that all about?
It's a stupid joke we have. That Bright Falls is the original inspiration for the TV show. This town can get weird at times. Never this weird, though. You need to bypass the damaged control box.
What am I, an electrician? Hold on!
Ah, damn it. That's smarts.
Good job, Wade. Okay, stick close. Our first stop is the town hall. The keys to the chopper are there.
Shift may cost
Bright Falls was a very, very challenging location to really develop, to get all the paths and all the branches of the journey to feel natural. The town was designed and built quite a bit earlier than we actually settled upon the final storyline twists and the specifics what actually happened there. This meant we had a lot of problem solving to do when we actually got to decide where Alan Wake and Sarah go to. For example, this branch, this harborside building that you're now just been going past, was something we incorporated very late in the process when we noticed that having the whole harbor street available for combat just didn't work that well as we expected for combat, pacing and technology.
There's light! I have a key. Watch my back, Wade.
It's an ambush.
Let's go, Wake. Okay, someone's messed with the fuse box here, but you should be able to jury rig it while I find the keys.
I already got electrocuted once today. How about I look for the keys and you get burned for a change?
The message was from Barry. He was getting worried at the station. He wanted us to hurry.
Okay, Sheriff, I got the keys.
The storefront's blocked. Come on, Wake, let's go around. We can meet him in the back. We can make it through the bookstore. Wheeler should be waiting for us in the backyard. Oh, hi, Dad. I've got it. Don't worry about it.
Sarah, about time somebody showed up. All this shooting in the air is idiotic. One of these days they'll kill somebody. And over Deerfest.
I know. Go back to bed. He's got a point, Wake. Look, this town can't take this.
It's me they want. The sooner I get out of here, the sooner you can all get back to life as usual.
I hope you're right. Come on, let me get this door open.
Wait, you got the keys to the bookstore?
Perks of being the sheriff. A girl needs to get around. They're really taking advantage of your presence here, Wake. I heard they're selling a lot of your Alex Casey books.
Right now, I'm not a big fan of my own writing.
I don't see Barry.
Look, Wake, maybe that's him. That's the way to the chopper.
Even though for a town Bright Falls is quite small, as a gameplay location it is huge. There are many buildings and many of them have interiors or had them at some point when earlier story revisions so required. As many large gameplay locations, it has been through countless of revisions and iterations. And unfortunately, not all the cool stuff that there once was survived. If you think about that simply in terms of time lost making something that eventually didn't make it in the game, well, it's simply a lot of wasted hours. But actually, all those changes simply served to make it richer and more varied. It's the same way that real towns actually acquire their appearance. You could say that the process has actually given it a small history of its own.
I'm gonna give Pastor Howard a piece of my mind about this lock. I told him to get it fixed.
Here they come.
Let's take a break. Omega-3 fatty acids are good for your heart.
Okay, it's open. Let's go, Wake. We're almost there. We'll have to go through the basement to get to the parking lot.
Yeah, there's no way going through the crypt will turn out to be a bad idea.
Did you call 911?
Guess that one saw the light, huh? You didn't like that one? A tough audience. Well, I got plenty more.
What are the Christmas lights for?
Protection, man. Like garlic against vampires.
Vampires.
The helicopter's just
The
across
Bright
the
Falls
parking
General
lot and up
Store
the
is
hill.
now my
Come
favorite
on.
place in the entire world. See this headlamp? It's like a superpower. I can just...
The fire station on the hillside was actually fairly late arrival to the city, the last building that was built. When we settled upon the how the journey ends with the helicopter, when we found a good location for the helicopter, it basically meant that we need to find an iconic building to go with it. The hillside was the best spot for the helipad, and when that was decided, everything kind of like locked into place. The fire station looked great, and the fire station yard just kind of like worked perfectly for the fight layout.
When someone throws There's a damn school bus at your head and you're about to take a helicopter ride with someone who may or may not have a pilot's license or clear for departure to Hot Springs.
Just up ahead. I'll need a while to prep for takeoff.
Don't take too long. I want to get out of here.
This warehouse is filled with gas bottles. They can be used to dispose enemies without using the flashlight at all. Just shoot the bottles so that they explode. But be careful that you don't get hurt by yourself. The same thing applies to the transformer yard which comes out of the warehouse. They can use booster bullets to force enemies into electric cables.
The power plant glowed in the night. It was close, but I had to find a way across.
This area is all about electricity. We're actually in a huge dam complex right now. What we're seeing across the river is the power station. The actual dam is higher up in the mountains, and right now we are in the transformer yard area. Pacific Northwest is filled with places like these power stations, and we just had to have one in the game.
Yeah, and since you do need power to keep the lights on, it's kind of fitting that this is actually a very important part of the story.
Yeah. But it's a little odd, don't you think, for an old lady like Weaver to just manage this whole complex by herself?
Oh, hell no. You know, that's how they roll in Bright Falls. But it doesn't hurt that it's also a visually stunning location.
Yeah, you can really see far from the top, and that's an excellent opportunity for us to flex the engine and show what it can do.
I'd seen a version of it painted all over the area, signifying hidden caches of supplies.
It's in the well-lit room.
Excuse me?
What you need to drive the darkness back. The well-lit room is at the dam. I built the room to keep it safe.
Will it help me find Alice? Will it get me back to the cabin? Fine, let's go. I can get my friends to come back with the helicopter.
Oh, we won't go outside. Never at night. That's rule number 1. You've been breaking the rules, young man, and where has that gotten us, Oh, I have a secret route, a lit route, an old water pipe. Something was damaged at the transformer yard. It's rained all the reserve power. Without it, the pipe will go dark. The power to the yard must be cut.
Let me guess. You want me to do it?
Young man, you're the one who likes to break the rules. I can't be outside in the dark. The kill switch is outside.
Another example of gameplay growing from fairly small designs was this journey to cut the power to transform a yard. We had just a bare minimum bonus version in place for a while, where it goes outside the power plant, flicks a switch, done. But obviously, after a few months of iterating, trying all the cool things, we noticed that, well, of course it works better when we have this combat, build-up, and the fairly simple, but hopefully enjoyable puzzle in the end.
I hoped Weaver was dependable. I'd stumbled into this crazy world a little over a week ago. She had been living this insanity for decades. I could see the kill switch that would cut the power to the transformer yard. Now I had to find a way to reach it. Designs these things. The transformer yard went dark and dead. Weaver's water pipe passage should now be good to go.
This way, young man. Follow me. Come, come. The pipe's empty now. We're ready to go. This way. We need to go. I knew them both, Tom and Barbara. I had such a crush on him. Such a beautiful man. I was jealous. There was a part of me that was maybe a little glad when she had the accident. And then Tom started writing and woke the darkness up. He tried to bring her back, but You can't do that. There are no free rides like that.
I'm starting to realize that.
In that case, young man, perhaps you're a smarter man than Tom was. The witch looked like her, but it wasn't. Barbara was sweet. He didn't understand until it was too late. He tried to undo it, wrote himself, her, everything he'd ever written out of the world. Oh, he was so famous. And afterward, no one knew. Oh, Tom. He left only one thing behind in case it happened again. Insurance. He trusted me. Or perhaps used me a little. Tom knew how I felt. Knew I wouldn't refuse him. I built the well-lit room and put it there. It's been waiting for you. We are characters trapped in a story you have written, and none of us will survive to see the end of it if the darkness isn't stopped. She'll twist the story to her own dark ends.
How do you know all this?
Tom, that's the way he wrote it. He still talks to me, you know, in television, from beyond, from below. We have both been touched by the darkness, young man. He saved us both with light, but the darkness stays with you. Leaves a stain.
At least I didn't have to worry about her. She knows this.
Cynthia Weaver, like Wake, has been touched by the dark presence, and like Wake, she sees things that other people can. She's the one who's been helping Wake, she's been leaving the supplies for him, she's been painting the weird messages on the walls, the ones that are revealed by light, and the thing is that nobody else can actually see them, only the people who have been touched like this. To everybody else it seems like she's just, you know, painting with imaginary paint on the walls, but it is actually real. It's a kind of a mystical thing. Cynthia knows a lot about fighting the Taken and the Dark Presence, but she's really not a warrior. She's too crippled for that by her encounter with the strangeness that sort of permeates the area. When she refuses to follow Wake into the darkness and rescue Barry, she's not being petulant about it, she's just physically unable to enter these areas of uncontrolled darkness. You'd have to drag her there, and if you did, she'd try to kill you. But, you know, let's put that in perspective, because, you know, she's guarding a secret she doesn't really understand anything about, because a man on her TV screen told her that she has to, and she never really had any choice about it. So, you know, it's not easy for her either, but, you know, all things considered, I think she does okay.
The crash site looked bad, but as far as I could tell, the wreck was empty.
Barry! Barry!
Oh, right there! Over there!
Hang in there, I'm coming!
You know when to make an entrance, Wake. We were ready to make like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
I have a different ending in mind.
Yeah, I'm fine. Thanks for asking.
I knew you'd be all right.
How's that?
The flaming eye of Mordor?
Yeah, laugh it up, funny head. Didn't we have somewhere to go?
Weaver will meet us at the dam.
See those lights? That's the elevator we need to take.
You can't be a good eye.
It's everywhere! Oh crap, there's more than one of them!
Nothing moves like that. I can't get a shot.
Was that it?
Wait, around the elevator. I'm keeping watch. That was...
Hear something moving
wow.
around.
I think we're okay.
Hey, Al, I got a bad feeling.
Let's keep our eyes on.
Try not to get us killed.
Heads up! Here they come! Oh no! Oh no! They're coming! We have to hold them off! Oh no!
Slowest elevator in the world!
It's almost here, Wake. Just hold on.
Let's go!
We're almost there. There's an entrance into the dam at the top. What's the plan, Wake?
Well, Weaver's crazy, but she's got something Zane left behind. Something to fix this.
Gee, could you be a little more vague?
Thomas Zane? Seriously? Might as well be Paul Bunyan or Bigfoot.
Yeah, well, he was real.
Let's be careful, okay?
Oh, jeez, I hate this.
Okay, wait. There's a button over there that opens the door. I think something's broken. Hold the button down so we can get in.
Ow!
Wait!
What's going on?
We can get to the dam through here. What's happening out there?
You guys go ahead and find Weaver. She should be in the dam now. I'll have to make it alone through the top.
Okay, wait. Good luck. Don't get yourself killed.
Please, be careful!
I'll take good care of Barry, Wake. You just look after yourself.
You gotta be kidding me.
The tornado is one of the few enemies that has stayed pretty much the same throughout the whole project. Of course, it's not a real tornado, but a manifestation of the dark presence. One of the challenges was to create a look for it that the player really wants to turn away and run. We spent plenty of time designing the visual looks and audio so that this is conveyed in the best possible way.
You will go no further. Stop now.
Previously on... I had a hangover. My head was about to explode and the light hurt my eyes. I needed my sunglasses and painkillers to dull the pain. In one of my finer moments of self-deception, I swore...
The New York apartment is one of my favorite locations in the game. From a story point of view, its role is of course to provide the background story for the relationship of Alan and Alice. But to me there is another important aspect as well. You see, it's of course also a homage to the New York setting of the Max Payne games. And my first 3 years here at Remedy were spent working on those games. Now that we're working on Alan Wake with its Pacific Northwest theme style, that's something really different. And so for me, the location of New York apartment was really a wonderful chance to sort of touch back upon those old Max Payne days and sort of go back to my roots. It's kind of like picking up an old tool and seeing if you still remember how to use it.
There was a message waiting for me on the machine.
You have one new message.
Ow! Are you still asleep? Wakey, wakey! You should have your...
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Harry
Hey, honey. Did you watch the show?
I didn't say anything stupid if that's what you want to know.
Okay, Grumpy. You want an aspirin or something?
Are you going to start with me about drinking now?
You know what?
I should have followed her advice, but suddenly I was angry, mostly at myself. Alone, daylight, surrounded by the beauty of the Pacific Northwest landscape. It was hard not to let
One question that's often asked about games these days is open world or linear. They are the two extremes of the same scale, and both have their pros and cons. Open world is of course all about the freedom of movement. You can go where you want and do what you want. And that's cool in itself, but by nature it fights against the traditional storytelling. Whereas linear gameplay fits storytelling very well, but that can get a bit constricted at times if the path is too narrow. We always want to tell a meaningful and compelling story, and we didn't want to compromise that in any way. But at the same time, we had lots of different scenarios and beautiful nature, and we didn't want to throw that away either. So what we did was intersperse it between the important story locations. So there is plenty of chance to explore your surroundings and plenty of cool stuff to find if you do.
Me. There was a link between us, always would be. I could feel its presence.
We're nearing the end of the story here. At this point, we pretty much know the answers to most of the major questions, such as what happened to Alice, where did the manuscript come from, and so forth. All that remains for Wake now is to make his final run into the heart of darkness and make his final sacrifice. He's said goodbye to his best friend. He's not really expecting to come back from this one, but he's willing to do that to save Alice. I'm not really sure if you could call Wake a heroic character as such. You know, he doesn't really, he doesn't have that square-jawed look or anything, but when it's all said and done, I really don't think he's a coward.
As Wake continues towards the conclusion of his story, of this story, we had the chance to create more outlandish sequences, more wilder places to really amp up the action. This field filled with burning wreckage was great, and I hope you actually find and you see the possessed monster truck. He's been around different locations during the development, but I'm happy he finally found a place to actually be here amidst all the carnage. To be honest, the development this final stretch of the journey wasn't quite as smooth as we'd hoped. The environment, the scope of this area east to the Cauldron Lake is massive, and we had problems in actually polishing everything to the degree we wanted. That being said, it's been great that, for example, here in the junkyard we managed to create the massive swinging crane to hang above the fight, and we did chance to create the burning piles of wreckage on the hillside.
When I told Barry my plan back in the well-lit room, I'd acted as if I knew what I was doing. I didn't. I was operating on the shifting logic of a dream. I had to fight my way to the lake through the horrors of the night. I had to flick an old battered light switch imbued with childhood magic. I had to write a happy ending to a horror story. I had to save my wife from the dark prison she was being held in.
I will never give her to you.
That's where Cauldron Lake was.
The nature of the dark presence definitely helped us when we had to make things, you know, when you actually just have to, just bigger and louder. A player is fairly familiar with the idea of trekking through a haunted forest or dark forest by this point in the game, but we had a chance to, you know, just when we needed, to throw entire boats and train carriages to the player, just creating total havoc.
back now. Do as you're told.
This is the final battle in the game. You can actually finally face the tornado and fight it. We didn't want to create a complicated puzzle, but this was more about the experience. We wanted to make this a memorable moment in the game. If you look carefully, you can actually see Barbara Jagger standing in the middle of the tornado. And she's the only thing standing between you and Cauldron Lake.
Alice never loved you.
Out. There's no light. Come back to bed and I'll make you forget all about your fear of the dark.
My fear? It's your fear. Why aren't you afraid?
At this point, it's pretty much over, and the Dark Presence knows that. It's still trying a couple of dirty tricks though, like dressing up as Wake's wife, but Wake isn't really buying it. I mean, you know, he knows who he married, and this thing here just isn't it. The Dark Presence is kind of desperate, as you can tell. It's trying all sorts of stupid little parlor tricks to fool Wake. We get some disembodied voices later on, but none of it is going to work. Alice wants to describe Wake as the most stubborn man she's ever met, and that kind of determination goes a long way in the Dark Place.
Alan, you're scaring me now. Come back to bed. Have you taken your pills? Do you want me to call Dr. Hartman? Come back to bed, Alan.
Come back to bed, Tom.
Wake's manuscript is one of our main storytelling tools in the game, and it has a lot of power. It's not just about a couple of words on a page, but at the same time writing those pages was really difficult because we don't have a lot of space there, and you still need to be able to tell these sort of little stories with a beginning and an end, and that was really challenging for us.
I like to think that the manuscript pages define a lot of the Alan Wake experience. While they also provide relevant information on how the world works, they also gives you a deeper access of the histories of certain characters.
Right. It's a really nice way of adding a little bit of depth and complexity into the whole game, and at the same time the pages themselves feel kind of relevant to the whole story because, well, they are the story.
I especially like the idea how they predict certain events in the game as they like unfold in front of the player as written, and it doesn't have to be tied into writing.
Yeah, it's really more about the sort of creation rather than the method of creation.
There's a lot of potential here.
Yeah.
I'm leaving you.
What?
I'm leaving you. I met someone. I'm in love with someone else.
Alice? No, what are you saying? You can't...
You don't love me. How could you? You don't even love yourself. All you do is torture yourself with work you can't do.
And that's it for the commentary. Thank you for hanging around all the way to the end. I hope it answered any questions that you might have had after completing the game. And maybe it showed you a bit how Remedy works. Thank you.
Put the light back on! What are you doing, Alan? Stop! Put the light back on!
It wasn't true. Nothing like that had ever happened.
You're not my Barbara!
I promise to be good. Please, untie me, you naughty boy. I will help you write your masterpiece. I will love you forever.
No, you're not